Welcome back to another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle video. My name is D-Free, and for this video we're going to go ahead and talk about how a Dragon Ball GT type category would work. Now, I know what you're thinking. There's probably already one in the game, such as the Shadow Dragon arc. But one thing to point out is that since those categories came out, that one and the Fusion category, the game has gotten a lot more lax with the categories. They're not as restricting or limiting with those categories, and they're also playing more with the leader skills if they feel like the category will be too OP versus, other categories in terms of, things like the Pure Saiyans category, getting that 130% boost. Hybrid Saiyans, I mean, they have a Largo Gohan and Trunks, so what do? 130% boost. Unfortunately, they don't really exercise that same discretion with other categories that probably should have it, such as Potara. That being said, Potara naturally has a 150 boost, but they also have an LR that's better than their 150 leader, Kefla SS2. He offers 170, so it doesn't really make, that great of a deal, or that small of a difference is what I want to say, if that makes any sense anyway. But, of course, Fusions, their natural 150 leader is SS4 Gogeta, but there also is Super Gogeta, the LR, that turns into a 170 leader. And then other teams like Frieza's team, of course, 170 attack is insane. I don't know if they figured that Bojack would be disgustingly good. Bojack is one of the hardest hitters, not to mention Maj Vegeta and Broly as well in that category. Of course, just pointing out a few examples. I know that it's dependent on the player and what units they have individually, but just some few examples. So that being said, hope you guys enjoy this video, this discussion video. Subscribe if you're new, of course, for more content, and we're going to go ahead and break it down. So first and foremost, I think a GT leader has to be able to do one thing. Aside from have the leader skill, right? As far as two things. I think they need to do a couple of things. They need to probably be a really good either support unit like Turles, because if you look at Turles is ridiculously good. He's so good that he actually slides into teams he can't even be on the category for. Like, he is optimal on almost every single team in the game just because his passive skill is unrestricted. And it's not a joke. I'm dead serious. It's been mathematically calculated over on the Reddit. By, I think Lolly did it, so shout out to the Reddit, of course. But Turles is able to literally slide onto any team just because his 40% is unrestricted, not type restricted or anything like that. He is incredible, okay? So something like that would greatly benefit this team. But that being said, even if we don't get that, you could technically put Turles on the team in the last slot, and it would work fine. And the reason why it works so well is because a lot of these teams have so much HP these days. I mean, you break 500k HP, 400,000 HP, to where it just doesn't matter anymore what you do with your last couple of slots, depending on the rest of your team. So that's one thing that they can do, or they can be the other end of that spectrum and be a good hard-hitting unit that has some of the intangibles, such as debuffing or stunning and things of that nature. When it comes to this team, I don't think that you want, or not even that you want, but you need access to some of those things. I mean, you're going to have optimally super attack countering units. One of them better than the other two. I'm talking about all three of the SS4s on the screen. But otherwise, you really have the defensive versatility when it comes to that. That's why I said I would probably prefer a support unit instead. But nonetheless, you can put Turles in the last slot. So what'll probably wind up happening is it would be a character that has access to being a hard-hitting unit, maybe some intangibles, might even get the transformation mechanic. I mean, it's not a foregone conclusion. If we look at Jiren, they literally didn't give Jiren a transformation. So yeah, there's that. And not everyone is going to be a transformation. Of course, transformations kind of came out midway through the lifespan of categories anyway, because we've seen several categories prior that did not get access to the transformation mechanics. Well, some of them do. That's just how things are. So let's go ahead and break down what the team construct would be like. So first and foremost, this guy is going to be on the team. Peerless Gleam, Super Saiyan 4, Gogeta, because why? Because he's Gogeta, and it's that simple. He's still one of the best SSRs in the game. So there's no way around that. This guy is incredible. Or, well, TURs in the game, I guess, but you get my point. He's incredible. He's just, honestly, he's freaking too good. He's insane. So anyways, super attack does greatly raises attack and defense for one turn and causes immense damage to the enemy. That defense raise allows him to tank hits that follow his super attack. If he happens to launch an additional, getting that double great raise, he becomes basically impervious to damage. Not to mention the fact that on his passive, he's able to counter super attacks with a high chance. Now, don't be confused. High chance typically is 50% on these units, but we have found instances due to mathematical calculations over on the Reddit again, because they're so good at this type of stuff. We have found instances where units have something that says high or great, and it's not actually the percentage that we think it is. So that being said, he says high on his passive, but he actually counters about 75% of the time. So literally almost every single time he's targeted for a super attack, he is going to get it. In fact, it's such a high chance that if you don't get it, you just simply got unlucky. So that being said, he gets a 120% attack increase. Also debuffs extreme type enemies attack and defense by 20%. And then on top of that, like I said, the counter chance. So he does so many different things. This is what I was talking about when it comes to intangibles. Not only is he just a hard hitter, right? 120, he also debuffs the enemies. Now, granted, that mechanic is less useful because versus when he came out, they started allowing for units not to be debuffable. I point this out all the time. I know it sounds like I'm beating a dead horse, but it's just kind of like, I'm just pointing it out. So that's not always usable, but it is when it's available, right? So you have access to that, which helps your other units tank better, probably do more damage. The defensive stat for opponents is a whole other thing. Either way, they tank better, your units do. And then on top of that, like I said, he's a debuffer. He's got the intangibles. As far as being a debuffer, he has his own attack increase. He has his own attack and defensive further increase via the super attack. And on top of that, he has more defensive viability if he brings in a situation where he's hit with the super. So he definitely has to be on the team. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Now, we'll get around to a team build, fully options to replace these units whenever we get a leader. Because it's kind of hard to break this down further than what I'm going to do in this video without a leader. But, of course, SS4, you know who the first 3 units are. There's not even any point in trying to hide it. These are, the first 3 units that make it onto this team. And a couple of really good things about this team is they're very similar to the Tournament of Power category in that they have a key link across the board. So you can virtually use any unit in this category on the team at the very least, and it'll work fine. It wouldn't be a situation where, you have a bunch of units that just simply don't link for key at all. That's actually really annoying to deal with. You don't have that issue with this category. They will be all having the GT link. So keep that in mind. But anyways, attack and defense on this guy, ability to counter super attacks, greatly reduces defense. Goku himself gets an attack increase of 150, which is still one of the higher passive increases in the game. Not the highest, but one of the highest. And then on top of that, the counter ability and defensive raise for 6 turns via his super attack on a leader skill with 150 plus defense. And then in conjunction with higher potential system, he's going to be a really good tank. Even though he doesn't naturally have it like that, he's going to be a very good tank after a couple of turns or so. So don't sleep on that, right? And not that you really need it because you have 3 counter units anyway, so not that you really need it. The odds of you actually taking super attack damage back are pretty slim in that scenario, but still a good tank, and he honestly, even without having to launch a super, will probably be a good enough tank for events in general, just because they don't have enough offense. Dokkan events don't have enough offense to really press you. I mean, people call Jiren hard, and I don't doubt it for people that, can't form a category team well. But for a team like this, you don't have to worry about Jiren at all, any way, shape, or form. So now that those 3 units are down, let's go ahead and talk about some more interesting options. Now, one of the hardest hitters in this category is going to wind up being this guy right here. But he's not going to have the luxury of running Sin because here's the deal. Unless the leader is a villain, which I don't know who the leader would be, maybe a new baby unit or something, I don't know, right? I didn't really talk about leader because it's very, very subjective. I would honestly want it to be a villain, so units like this guy can have access to more links, like big bad bosses, more of the time, for that exact reason. Otherwise, it's subjective. But, if the leader's a villain, then fine. If not, he's going to be on this team and only really have Shocking Speed and GT, which is another thing I meant to say earlier. Shocking Speed is almost fully existent with the higher end units of this category. They almost all have it. So he'll have access to GT and Fierce Battle most of the time. Those are going to be the most common links. But the reason I said he's not going to have the luxury of being with Sin is because Sin is just not going to be good enough. There's too many good units that are better than Sin, and Omega isn't good enough to be featured over, SS4 Gogeta and whoever on that category with him, Goku or whatever, on that rotation with them, excuse me. And then the leader, right? What if the leader's really good and he's a hero type unit and he's on the second rotation with SS4 Gogeta or SS4 Vegeta or whatever, right? So that's where the issue with Omega and Sin comes in. It's just kind of like if one of them can't be on rotation, which again, Sin would never consider being on rotation without Omega, then the other is not going to be either. So nonetheless, though, I can't discount how valuable this guy is. enemy debuff. He also does it to all enemies, so he works better than Gogeta with that end of his passive, in that he can do it to both classes, extreme and super types, so it helps a lot. It's a bit more versatile, being able to use it on any event necessary. 120 attack, and instead of the ability to counter, he actually launches an additional super with a additional attack with a chance of it being a super. So all in all, you have a unit that could potentially rattle off 3 super attacks in a turn. If you have Dupes invested, they could all be crits. And yeah, Omega was the hardest hitter in the game for a time, and he will probably, under a 170 team, get pretty close to being that again. You know, not factoring in LRs, of course, but he would probably shoot up that list again on a better team. So that's one of the things I wanted to point out. So I'm not going to overlook Omega. It gets a little bit easier from here, because here's the deal. Super 17 would technically be available on this category, which is what makes me think that one of the next upcoming categories, because this guy currently doesn't have one, will either be a GT category of some sort or an Android category of some sort, just to kind of get him off the ground. That's going to come really soon. You know, something like that, something he can be in, because he's the only 120% leader that is not in a category. And I'm sure they know that, right? Because before it was just him and Goku and, you know, Cooler and Janemba. All of a sudden, Turles comes out and Cooler and Janemba leave that list of units. And then it's just him and Goku. And then all of a sudden, Pure Saiyans comes out and now there's no more Goku. So it's just all Android 17. So you can kind of see the pattern. They've went out of their way to remove those units from that list of characters that are not a part of the category. And really, it applies to most Androids anyway. I mean, I know that some of them are in categories, but it applies to most of them. So it makes the most sense to either make that or something like a GT category or Android category. So they're going to do that sooner than later. And I didn't want to discount this guy. It's just he's kind of too slow. You know, he has shocking speed. Unfortunately, he got the shaft of not getting big bad bosses, which actually really hurts on this team, especially if the leader's a villain, especially if, you know, you have Omega on the team. That actually really hurts, because that would be a very good link for them. Even if they're off rotation or cycle rotation, what have you, that would be very good. Just spot, you know, attack increase. But it is what it is. And also, big bad bosses, now that I mention it, isn't super conducive to the SS4s, because they're very good defensively. So, I don't know, it's just kind of wonky trying to run villains and use one of their best links, which shouldn't be an issue. But that doesn't only apply to this team. It technically applies to every team villains are run on anyway, because they're all so good defensively. So, I'm not going to sleep on him. I'm going to put him in there. But really, it depends what the leader skill is for the character. But honestly, now that I think about it, I just saw a unit. He's getting off the list. I'm sorry. I said I was going to put him on. He just got kicked off real fast. Now, of course, there's always the SS3, SS4 Goku combo. This category is actually flush, hear me, flush with support units. There's SS3 Goku, who might wind up being the optimal one whenever we do calculations, even if he's not on rotation with SS4 Goku, or if that is the better rotation, who knows? We'll have to figure that out. If SS4 Goku becomes the hardest hitter on this team with the tandem of SS3 being with him. But, you know, there's not only that, there's Pandel. There's Physical Pan. There's a lot of good support units. You don't even necessarily need Turles, because there's so many now that I think about it. And I was talking about Turles earlier. So really, for the last couple of slots, you just take 2 of those 3 and put them on there, and you're good to go. Now, there are other really good units that you can put on the team, like the SS3 Vegeta, the other SS3 Goku, the AGL one that's up here. You know, GT Trunks, 100% passive. The GT Vegeta Super Saiyan Tech Type, really good unit. The Trunks right there is another really good unit that's next to the SS4 Gogeta. And also, a final really good unit I would want to point out is this guy. Like, he's actually in this category, and he's pretty good. He has shocking speed. He has some of the intangibles that would allow him to link pretty well with Omega, such as Brutal Beatdown, Nightmare, and Fierce Battle. So, like, off rotation, even if Omega's on rotation, every few turns you'd have the option to link him with Omega, and Omega be pretty good. You know, this can be Omega's Sin, technically. They don't have to be on the rotation together. He doesn't get access to the Shadow Dragon link, I believe, but I think he has access to everything else with this guy. So, you know, GT would be a really good category. It's the whole reason I wanted to do this video, because there's just so many units that do a lot of different things, and it's not as top heavy as some of the other categories. So, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, make sure you consider subscribing to the channel for more content. That is it. I'll catch you guys in the next Dragon Ball GT discussion video about Dokkan battle. Take it easy, guys.